Hey everybody, this is Jory at Lifepointe Church. I'm the Connections Director here. And what a treat we have in store for you for midweek online. If you were here, you heard Pastor Josh talk about the importance of rest. And also, if you were not here, you're going to hear an amazing message that Josh spoke about. I'm excited for you guys to hear. Get a pen, get a sheet of paper, take some notes, and let God speak to you as you hear Josh talk about rest.
Well, have you ever been told something or given a set of instructions that seemed completely unbelievable, but you do it anyway because you trust that person and it ends up working out at the end? You know, one of the Christmases that I most remember was being younger, and my mom had all of the presents around the tree, and she handed me this one. It was a small square package, and I ripped open the packaging, and it was a PlayStation 1 video game. The only problem was I didn't have a PlayStation. Now, my mom knew that I was going to open up the next gift, which was the console, to be able to play the game. But in that moment, I was like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, I don't have a PlayStation. I'm not going to be able to play this thing. This thing is useless to me. And she said, hey, Josh, would you just open up the next gift? And because it was my mom, of course, I'm going to listen to her. And I opened it up, and I was absolutely blown away with the fact that they got me a PlayStation. As a matter of fact, I took it and I ran into the next room and I said, Dad, look, I have this PlayStation. It's awesome. I spent many Christmases and birthdays after playing that thing. I still play video games to this day. I absolutely love it. But I think that there's a story in the book of Exodus that kind of is similar to this. You see, in the book of Exodus, God began providing and calling out the people of Israel, and he began to just work incredible miracles. You have the parting of the Red Sea where they were able to escape the Egyptians who were coming after them. Moses actually took bitter water, a body of bitter water, and threw a piece of wood in the water, and it turned sweet and drinkable for the people. And now in Exodus chapter 16, the Israelites find themselves hungry. They're starving for food. And God gives them a set of instructions and asks some things out of them. And I want to just take you through this account because I think that it's so important in our discussion and what we've been talking about when it comes to rest. I want to read Exodus chapter 16, verses 2 through 5 first. We'll kind of jump around the rest of the chapter. This is what it says. It says, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron, his brother. The Israelites said to them, if we only had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt, there we sat around pots of meat and we ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert to starve the entire assembly to death. And then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see if they whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. You see, we know that in order to find rest in the wilderness, which in this culture, in this society, and where we live, man, it is so hard to find rest. It is so hard to find the ability to just take a break. And a lot of us feel very isolated and very alone. And so I want to just kind of encourage you with how we can find rest in the wilderness. And so the first thing is this, that rest will actually be tested, because the Israelites were going to be tested in this same way in Exodus. You see, they were asked to restrain themselves from gathering as much as they could every day, but only to take enough for what was given or what was needed for each of the household. You see, God began testing them so that they would begin to trust him daily. And it forced them to think about the provision in a way that they hadn't before, that he was actually going to provide every single day, and all they had to do was obey, do the work when it was time to do the work, and rest when it was time to rest. You see, resting is a very difficult thing to do, especially when you talk about farming and gathering food. If you rest for a day during a harvest, man, you'll start to miss out on the things that you can bring in. You see, there's a sense of urgency in our culture, in our communities, in schools, in just life in general. We have a sense of urgency to get as much done as we can, to do as much as we can, because that's where a lot of us find our worth. See, we've been conditioned to always be on the move. We have a need and an urge to go and do everything that we can do so that we stay busy and so that we look busy. And a lot of times if we have free time, we start checking our calendars and looking at our watch going, okay, what did I miss? I have to be doing something. There's no way that I can have this much free time. You see, the Lord, as is given in this example in Exodus, the Lord may ask us to rest in a way so that we can be tested to trust him more. You see, he may even ask us to do nothing for a season of time and just be with him and just be able to rest and trust in him. And it goes against every single thing that we think we should be doing, and that's exactly the point. You see, they had it in their head of how they were going to be able to get food and provide for their families. And God is saying, I wanted to change this for you. And I think that it's kind of the same way. You know, I know that I still have the sniffles, man. Allergies are going crazy right now. But I know that when I am sick and I always just feel lazy and unproductive. But I'm sick, right? I need rest. I need to be able to strengthen myself up. But I still have this guilt and this shame of like, I didn't do anything today. I feel lazy today. I'm such just a lazy person. I feel like I should be doing something. A lot of times when I set my phone down or I turn social media off or I do some of these things, you know, I feel guilty about people and friends that I might not be as connected to for a couple of days or even a night. You know, I think of work things that I have to get done, and I'm like, if I put this up, then I'm saying like I'm not going to be able to do this, and that makes me feel kind of uneasy sometimes. You see, our rest will be tested in ways so that we can begin to trust God to actually come in and take care of the things that we're not doing while we rest and while we get ready to go back in and collect the harvest, like what was happening here in Exodus. I want to jump down into verses 15 through 20. This is what it says. It says, when the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, this is the miracle of the provision of food. They said, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent. The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much and some gathered little. And when they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, no one is to keep it until morning. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and it began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. You see, rest will be tested. We know this, we see this. Rest is also something that will be required from us at times, just like it was for the Israelites. There was a balance there between going out and working and coming back and resting. You see, the people that tried to save the manna probably went without because they had a distrust in God providing for them every single day. There's always going to be people who test every single rule, but as they began to test God's promise of provision, they found the food that they had saved to be inedible. There were no shortcuts in following these instructions. It was required that they work when it was time to work and that they rest when it was time to rest. You see, rest was a requirement in order for them to receive the miracle God wanted to provide for his people. The ask that God had didn't make sense to the Israelites, so they didn't adhere, and then they ended up paying the price. I think if we slow ourselves down enough to take time to be with the Lord and to listen to his voice, we can start to, if we don't do that, then we begin to start operating and moving without his anointing and without his covering and without his hand over us. And again, that's going to bring us to a place of rest and relying on him, because we're going to come back tired. We're going to come back frustrated. We're going to come back with all of these broken pieces and say, what do I do now? So it's better to do it out of obedience now than to do it out of necessity later. You see, by thinking that we can still pack a full schedule of all of our sports and clubs and activities, and then we just squeeze God into those free spaces, into those margins, we'll find ourselves with the rotted out manna that was supposed to be the provision and the blessing of God. You see, I don't know if you've ever been like me, but I was asked to do so much from my parents, from chores and different things that I was, asked to do. Hey, can you go get this? Can you go do this? And a lot of times when they were asking, they would ask nicely, and I should probably say yes, because more times than not, I was going to have to do it anyway, whether it was me fighting and trying to just be a punk to them, or if it was me actually just listening to them, I was going to end up doing it anyway. And so it's kind of the same way here. Rest will be required one way or another, and we have to understand that. I want to go ahead and just read what happened in these last 7 verses, and then we'll kind of end our time, and I don't want to take too much more of it. So this is what it says in verses 23 through 30. It says, he said to them, this is Moses, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be the day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is the Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Nevertheless, some people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one is to go out. So the people rested on the 7th day. So rest is tested, rest is required, and rest is also honored. In the end, rest is honored. You see, the Sabbath wasn't just a day from resting from work, but it was actually refocusing on God and who he was. It was being able to position themselves in order to look at God. And the Sabbath is the same thing that we do today. And, it's a different day. We choose Sunday as our Sabbath for a lot of us, where we come to church, we focus in on God, and for a lot of us we take naps and we do certain things. But see, rest, it doesn't just come out of the 10 Commandments and this thing in Exodus. It actually came as a work-rest balance in Genesis with Adam and Eve. See, the time and the energy that was previously spent on gathering manna could now be spent in worship, and to some extent be spent on nothing at all. There's an honor that comes when we are obedient. There's an honor that comes whenever we are able to obey God's command. You see, those who obeyed were honored with rest and a sense of fullness. They didn't go without. They weren't hungry. But those who decided to go out and continue to work and continue to try to go get as much as they could, they went hungry and they went without the blessing of manna that God wanted to provide. You see, we have to be careful to hear God's instructions so that we don't miss out on his blessing. Even if it doesn't make sense in the moment, God is always going to be faithful to grant rest to those who are weary. If we would trust God to provide, we can start to find him in our rest and in our refuge. We can start to find that in him. You see, rest was an intrinsic part of God's instructions. It was instrumental in obeying his command in Exodus. So don't take that rest for granted today. Don't be lazy. But there is a time to gather and there's a time to rest. And we have to trust that God will take care of those who put their faith and their trust in him.
Wow, what an amazing message, Josh. Thank you for sharing your heart, for trusting God, resting in him, resting in his promises. And then also just remember, guys, that as you start obeying God in life, just in little things, especially what Josh just spoke about, you're going to get tested at times. Things will be required of you, but it's also worth it. So I just want to encourage you as you go throughout the rest of your week, just to keep this in the forefront of your mind. And you guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this amazing ministry here at Lifepointe Church. Pastor Josh, thank you for sharing a good word. Also, don't forget, below you can follow us on Instagram, here on Facebook. Also, if you have any questions, reach out to Pastor Josh. We'd love to be able to talk with you and pray with you throughout the week. Have a blessed day.